Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I am Seb Cox, a director from the southeast of the UK, and today I'm going to be talking about how we can come up with micro-budget film ideas that actually sell. Now the reason why I'm making this video is because I'm starting to work with a team of writers who are going to be starting to collaborate in making our next few feature film ideas. So I'm basically making this episode for not just you guys out there, but my team of writers as well. And hopefully that's enough validity for you to show that this method is a reasonable one to go ahead and use. And if you don't find it useful, well, it's YouTube, this is free. Sorry. It comes down to a few different steps. Any creative idea has the same kind of process. You have a process called divergent thinking, and then you have a second process called convergent thinking. I myself have actually done this reading for my dissertation and also my master's. If you look into the research of it, that's what it comes down to, those two states of mind. Divergent thinking is the process where we just write down and come up with as many ideas as we possibly can without worrying about the limitations of the practicalities of actually doing these ideas. Convergent thinking, on the other hand, is going to be the second process, which is where we actually refine the types of ideas that we want to go ahead with. Now that process considers the limitations and tries to match a solution to all the possible scenarios that we're trying to deal with, both of which are a difficult process, neither of which is more difficult than the other, but they just take different parts of your brains to overcome these two tasks. Now we're basically going to be repeating those two processes, but for very specific questions that will enable us to actually come up with effective film ideas that will sell and will be able to work within the budgets that we have. Essentially, we're basically doing like a simplified ikigai. If you've ever heard of those, it helps you decide what job you should do in life, but instead you're thinking about it in terms of for a film. What is going to be the ideal combination of things to make a project for? At the top is going to be what you want in your film. What qualities about your film do you want to include? On one side, we've got the resources that you have. What do you have that's accessible to you? On the bottom, you've got to think about, well, what can we actually sell? What markets will buy this kind of product or a product at all? And on the other side, we'll think about what are the needs of the world? What kind of questions do we need to be probing, and what stories do we need to be telling the world? So with our four-way Venn diagram, we're going to think about that first one at the top. We're going to think about what it is we want to include in our film. Now, like I said, this is going to be our divergent thinking process first, so we just write down anything that comes into our head, things that we would like to include in a film. It doesn't have to be one singular film, just all the things that you'd like to do at some point. It could be over several different films, it doesn't matter at this point. Just get stuff down, fill a page, fill a book, fill as many pages as you can, just with things that you want to include in a film that you've made or will make one day. Next, let's think about the resources. So again, it's the same process. It's divergent thinking still. We're going to just write down all the resources we have. Now this could be equipment, this could be location, this could be actors, it could be props that you have, just anything at all. What could you even ask a friend of a friend for that you might be able to get and use in your film? What local businesses do you have that possibly, if you ask them, they would be willing to let you film on their premises? Anything like that. Or even if you're kind of like, well, we probably need to give them something in return, well, you could obviously start a separate list of things that you could possibly do for them. One of the best ways to get around low budget is actually doing skill trade for skill trade. So you do something for them, they do something for you. Now we're going to leave the bottom one for now. We're now going to think about the other one on the other side, which is to do with what the world needs. So this is where we start to think about, right, what problems have we noticed with the world? What areas of society, of the world, need questioning? What needs probing from a film? Just list as many things that you think are wrong with the world. Yes, it can be a bit depressing, but remember, you're going to be the one who's trying to point out these things and solve them and start to point out to the world where we can change, all right? Films are a brilliant way of showing people and modeling the correct way of doing things, or if not, at least bringing light to them so that a change can start to be made. Now, the bottom one, which I'd say is the most difficult one, is how can you get paid for it? Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be an audience that you think is going to buy your film, although it's definitely worth putting that in there. But you could think about what kind of merchandise and what kind of marketing approach am I going to do with this project? Are you writing yourself into a pitfall of a film which you're writing it for a market which no one's going to buy? maybe you come up with a horror slasher film that's for toddlers. I mean, I've heard ideas that have succeeded with that, but they had a very clever marketing strategy behind them. But it's basically thinking, what markets are going to want to buy my film? And do they have the resources to buy my film? If you're thinking about what is actually going to bring you profit, if I'm honest, probably if you aim a film for an older generation, because they'll have more expendable resources, more income that they can spend on entertainment. If you're writing for teenagers, it's actually the most difficult to sell because they have no additional income to afford those kind of entertainment things, especially when most of them are getting all their entertainment for free on YouTube or even just pirating. So you've got to weigh up what is going to be an audience which will buy, has the resources to buy, and will be looking in areas that will want to purchase certain things. Like I mentioned, it doesn't need to be the film itself that's being sold. Something to think about: if you are going to be doing merchandise, your film is the advert. Your film isn't the product. So just something else to consider. Disney have always done it. Warner Brothers have always done it. The film is the advert and the merchandise is the product. Something else to think about, but you need to be putting in this bottom section all the possible revenue sources that you could use for a film and the kind of audiences that you would be happy to make a film for that would be able to buy it if you don't want to do merchandise. Okay, so we've done all our divergent thinking. With each of those 4 spaces, we filled as many pages as we can with each of those different ideas and resources and people and ways of getting paid and what you love, what the world needs, right? So we've done all that. Now comes the convergent thinking. So now we need to switch our side of our brain from something which just streams out loads of ideas into something which can start to condense and bring things together. Now, this is a lot more difficult for me to tell you how to do it. It's kind of a process that you need to do looking at the resources that you've put down. But the general idea is that you see what you have and you are trying to start to make connections between those different elements. To be honest, what I like to do is I like to have my pages which I've just written loads of ideas on, and then I like to type them up and bring them into a 4-way Venn diagram. Something which we can lay out our ideas and start to see what categories start to blend together. Or what I like to do as well is I like to just color code them and say, well, this one with our resources, that resource, and that resource will go very well with these qualities that I'd like. For example, if I had a 3D camera and I wanted to shoot a 3D film, I could be like, well, there we go, that's an obvious connection. Now, is there the kind of people who'd want to see that kind of thing? Well, probably a more youthful generation. People are more interested in tech. And then you've got the extra sales stuff there with merchandise to do with 3D glasses if you wanted to go down that route. So then you could then link those 3 things together. Then you've got to think about, right, what does the world need? Well, is there any stories that are better told using 3D, using a 3rd dimension? Start to look through those, start to connect them up. And it's just this process where you start to bring these ideas together. Now, hopefully, after all this, you're going to have a lovely list of connected resources that you have and possible ways of then selling these ideas. Now, you might not have a full idea of what these can be just yet. And if you're struggling with this convergent thinking, here's a couple of tips on how to create catalysts for your convergent thinking. This is a process which I love to do, which will help you with the selling of your film and the initial generation of an idea. Stay up very, very late until I'm on the verge of falling asleep, and then what I'll do is I'll force myself to write down as many film titles that I think will sell. I don't know what the stories are about yet, but just film titles that I think are eye-catching and people will want to pick up and watch or buy. Then what I do is I set my alarm for very early in the morning. And I wake up at that time and I look at my list of titles and then I write log lines for them. Now, the reason why I'm doing it at these crazy hours is so that your mind is more flexible, it's more versatile. It enables you to have more lucid ideas and you worry less about what it is that you're putting down. You think about it less, and at this stage it's best to do that because you're just generating stuff, you're divergent thinking. Once you have that list of ideas and a couple of log lines, you can start to see if any of them match with your 4 4-way Venn diagram. Start to link things together that you might not have initially thought that you could, because now you have a somewhat path to take your ideas down. If you don't like the idea of just coming up with film titles and doing that, you can actually just think of it by theme. What kind of themes do you want to tell? What kind of tone do you love? What kind of tone do you love to tell stories in? And you can try and build them together that way. Now hopefully what you'll do is you'll be able to generate a lovely list of different ideas with resources that you have, which also has an audience to sell to, which has a marketing plan for the kind of resources that you can sell. You've justified what it is you want to do because you're trying to talk about problems that you can see in the world that you want to start a conversation about, and you've also got an idea or several ideas that include the kind of things that you want in a film. And there you have a correlation of ideas through divergent and convergent thinking that have produced a collection of film ideas that you can feasibly make and feasibly sell, all on a micro budget. That's my process for coming up with new film ideas on a micro budget that will sell. I hope you found this video useful. If you have any questions about the whole process or anything to do with filmmaking in general, please feel free to leave a comment below and I'll respond to everyone I can. If you found this useful, please leave a like on the video or even subscribe. You can follow on my socials at SebCoxFilms on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook. Thanks very much for watching and I'll see you next time.